I'm gonna use scissors. You could use a knife, or you could just pluck them if you want, but I wanna keep the dirt out of the bag. So I just snip them off at the base. We're gonna take these home and cook them up. Now that it's cooking. Bon appetit, much love everybody, thanks for watching.
Welcome to Mushroom Wonderland.
Hey, how's it going everybody? This is Aaron Hilliard from Mushroom Wonderland, and it's the middle of January. It's kind of cold out here, 49 degrees. We're gonna go out and see what kind of mushrooms are growing right now. So if you're into mushrooms or you wanna get into mushrooms, this is the perfect channel for you. And so today I'm at a park, and I'm gonna go walk around the park and then go walk through the trail systems here. Now let's go see what kind of mushrooms are growing out here today. This is January, right in the middle of January here, and if I look all over the ground, I'm seeing all these kind of orangish brown caps growing. Let's take a look at these real close up, and if you look, they all have these like amazing little rings on them, right? See that ring right there on the stipe? Very cool. So here's a pretty big one, and this is used to be called Chlorociboria genus, but now they're calling it Pholiotena. These are actually a very deadly mushroom. They're growing here in the Northwest, pretty common lawn mushroom, and you can really identify them because of that ring on the stipe, and then they've got a real kind of rusty orange spore print, and they're just little lawn mushrooms, but that ring is very pronounced. Very prolific mushroom growing right here in the winter, the Pholiotena rugosa. So it's a very toxic mushroom. You don't want to confuse these for a different mushroom. So yeah, these Pholiotena, definitely a dangerous, poisonous mushroom, one of the more poisonous mushrooms growing here native to the PNW. So, you know, put that on the list of mushrooms that you definitely know about if you're a wild mushroom forager here in the Northwest, because that one can definitely hurt you. And I just came across some other kind of interesting ones. It looks like just a pile of orange peels, and it gets the name orange peel fungus, because look at that, it looks just like an orange peel. You've probably seen this before. I think it's called Alluria, and this is the orange peel fungus, Alluria aurantia, or something to that effect. And this is actually an edible mushroom, although it's just not really appealing. There's just no flavor to it, no taste. It's a jelly fungus, so it's like the Paziza, and it often grows in just areas where other things just can't grow. Orange peel fungus, or Alluria, and you've probably seen that. You can see it growing on like construction sites. All right, so that park was pretty cool. Finding those little Pholiotena was kind of cool. But we came across the road into a forested kind of trail system. So we've reached this part in the woods where it's kind of a big log jam, and you can see all kinds of conch mushrooms growing in here. This one's pretty gray, but I think this is just because it's dead. This one down here taking on more of an orange color. Oh, so if we look down in there, look at that. It's a beautiful conch growing in this big pile of trees, and that one is going to be your Phomitopsis montiae. Used to be called Phomitopsis pinicola. I feel like I'm beating a dead horse a little bit with this, but common mushroom. You can find these growing all over the wood. Probably the most common mushrooms in the forest of the PNW. Up here in the Northwest, they've been renamed from pinicola to Phomitopsis montiae. Beautiful, big, beautiful trees. Look at this. Big Douglas fir growing right next to a hemlock. Look at the difference in the bark. So both of these trees are known to support ectomycorrhizal life here in the Northwest. So down here, the roots go into the ground, and all kinds of little fungus and plants and stuff connect with the roots of these big huge trees like this. Definitely a big mother tree. This smaller fir tree right here is probably a direct offspring of this big one. The ectomycorrhizal fungi grows around the base of these kind of trees, and it wraps its mycelium around the outside of the roots of those trees, and they have a great little connection. And the mushrooms have enzymes that help to break down carbohydrates that the tree can use, and in return the tree gives some carbon dioxide off and some other nutrients that the mushrooms can use. So they work together to grow in these forests. So look over here and see this kind of mossy log. There's some stuff growing all down here on this log, and more growing over here. Oh, cool. So this is known as Scytinotus longinquus. I think that's how you pronounce it. It's kind of a mock oyster. See how pink they look? And definitely not growing quite like an oyster because they have little stems, but look at all that cool mycelium growing right there. How neat is that? So this is the mycelium just jumping on this wood. It's beautiful. Look at that. These look kind of like oyster mushrooms. See that? But it's got this really pronounced little stipe on it. You can see that, but the gills do look a bit like pleurotus or the oyster mushroom. Growing all up this old log, old alder tree. Yep, because there's a whole bunch more of this stuff trying to grow on this old alder snag. So yeah, these are pretty common. Could be confused for the oyster growing out here. Gunner's just crying at me. And if we look down here, okay, growing right next to that log, we've got a different thing growing right here. This one could look a little bit like a turkey tail, but that one's not. That one's a Stereum ostrea. So if we look underneath, this one doesn't have pores. So it's not white and smooth and pore surfaced like Trametes versicolor or any of the Trametes genus. This one is Stereum, also known as the false turkey tail. You can see it has concentric ring zones, kind of like turkey tail does. Whoops. But really common, and this one is not known to be medicinal. See, there's just no pores there. It's smooth underneath. So there's quite a few different species of Stereum, so we'll just call that a Stereum species growing on dead wood, just like a turkey tail or these Scytinotus would be. But saprotrophs, loving eating this decaying wood. Looks like we got some more right here, so all kinds of stuff. This one looks more like the Trametes hirsuta, and yeah, it's got the pores underneath, even though this one's moldy. So, you know, in fact, all these mushrooms are working year-round. Just because we can't see their fruiting body does not mean that the chanterelle mycelium under feet right now is just munching away and it's doing a good job doing what it does. It does go a bit dormant when it's cold out, but these mushrooms really just don't stop growing down here underground. We just stop seeing the fruiting bodies. I'm gonna flip this camera because I came across another dead piece. And if we look here, growing on the end, good example of Stereum. Very common one growing out here, the false turkey tail Stereum. Again, it's not gonna have pores underneath. It's just got a smooth surface. Kind of pretty colored, but the color is a lot like it is on the top of the cap. These ones are really orange, getting lighter towards the edge of the cap. This one's chewing on this old alder tree. So see this big dead snag and growing right there. It looks like a bunch of little fairy parachutes, and I'm pretty sure that's exactly what those are. Those are the Marasmiellus candidus, or the fairy parachute. And see that cottony stuff? That's all mycelium growing outside the tree. So very, very prolific flush of the Marasmiellus candidus right here. It's right there. How amazing. What a crazy mushroom mess going on right here on this tree. Beautiful. Marasmiellus candidatus taking over this alder snag. My sister said she just sits and watches my Mushroom Wonderland video, so big ups to Rena out there in Mushroom Wonderland. Love you, sis. She knows what a red-belted conch is. Wow, so it suddenly just started raining out here. This cloud moved over, and as you can see, it's a little bit wet out here. And that's okay though. That's part of living in the Pacific Northwest or anywhere that mushrooms are really going to be growing. What do we got here? Let's see. So look right down here. These little tiny brown mushrooms. The caps are pretty much flat. When I pick this out, let's take a look at that. Can you see it? It's got these little striations on the cap. It's basically made from the gills underneath. It's got this really dark kind of stipe, and there's a few of them growing right here. So these little brown mushrooms that I just found here in this mossy part of the conifer forest is commonly known as Galerina vittiformis. So I don't know if we can get a focus on that. It's probably not toxic, but you know, being that it's related to Galerina, might just be a good idea to leave that one alone as far as eating it. You can see it's got this kind of light brown cap, and it's got little striations or little lines on the cap, and basically that's just the gills showing through the top of the cap. That's how thin the flesh is. And the stem here, the stipe, is actually really, really tough. You can bend it and it doesn't break easy, and it's really dark colored. And so these indicators and its size and stature, this is about 1.25 inches tall, and it's completely mature, so it's dropping a lot of spores right now. But this is Galerina vittiformis, and these are known to be good for mycoremediation. So this mushroom can be used to absorb heavy metals out of the soil on contaminated sites. Like old paper mills will sometimes have like mercury in the ground, and this mushroom is known to help to pull those heavy metals out of the soil and make the soil back to usable again. So although they're very tiny, they could be a very, very useful mushroom, and not even just the fruiting body, but the mycelium of this mushroom could be used to do some bioremediation like that. So right here, more of the Galerina vittiformis. You can get a better look at it there. It's got really striate caps, these really dark stipes that are pretty tough, and they don't break easy. Unlike a Mycena mushroom, these Galerina mushrooms have a reddish orange kind of brown spore print. Orangish brown, I should say. And so Mycena have a white spore print, but great one for bioremediation. Probably not a real good one to eat, even though you'd be hard pressed to find enough of them to really want to even try to eat them. They're so little. Wow. So look at this wood that I just came across. I see these sticks laying here. Look at this really like kind of bluish green color on it. Can you see that? Whoops. This is actually caused by a fungus, and it turns it blue-green colored like that. How interesting is that? And I don't see any fruiting bodies on these right now, but this blue color is unmistakable. Little mushrooms at one time were growing on this, and the mycelium actually turns the wood this blue color. Super cool. Some people whittle this wood and make little trinkets and stuff out of it. It's just kind of neat that greenish blue dye is actually caused by the mycelium. Something you don't come across too often in nature, and something it really stands out here. Super interesting. So let me give you a quick rundown on what this mushroom is. It's called Chlorociboria aeruginascens. It is a beautiful blue-green cup fungi. The mushroom is a common sight, but the fruit bodies are only seen very infrequently. It's mainly winter-fruiting fungus and sometimes referred to as the green cup fungus. Wood infected with Chlorociboria fungi have been used in woodworking in Italy. The practice dates back to the 14th century. In North America, we have two species of Chlorociboria. Chlorociboria aeruginascens, featured here, and the Chlorociboria aeruginosa, which is practically identical to the naked eye but features longer spores and larger, rounder terminal cells on its outer surface. The pigment that turns the wood green exists in several forms in various colors within the wood cells. The combination of a yellow-orange form with a blue-green form results in the dazzling blue-green coloration of the colonized wood. It also can make wood less appealing to termites and has been studied for its cancer-fighting properties. So if you see any of this blue-green wood, collect it. Maybe you can whittle it into something nice. Or you could just put it on the shelf as a good conversation piece. All right, so we've come across a mushroom. This one I was pretty much hoping we were going to find out here. So it's growing at the base of this stump, this old conifer log around here. And it's got some kind of like Stereum growing on it. But if you look down here, this might look like a mushroom that I talked a lot about in the fall. But let's take a look at some of the features of this mushroom. Here's one growing kind of independently. And you can see down here at the base, we've got a lot of rhizomorphs. You know, these are these little strands coming off basically the mycelium. And what happens is this white stuff is growing all over through the ground, through the soil here. So this is in the genus Hypholoma, and that is a really close relative of Hypholoma fasciculare. That's the type species of the poisonous PNW counterpart to this mushroom. But this one is known as the smoky gill or the Conifer Tuft. So let's see, I picked one here, and you can see this kind of smoky looking color on the gills rather than the green gills that the Hypholoma fasciculare would have. This one's really a smoky color, and that's where the scientific name capnoides comes from. So Hypholoma capnoides, the Conifer Tuft. So it's a close relative of the Sulfur Tuft, but the Sulfur Tuft being one of the most toxic mushrooms growing here wild in the PNW, this one is a decent edible. So I think I'm gonna pick these, and I've never eaten them, so I want to try them out. In my backpack, I carry a little brown paper bag and a pair of scissors. So I'm going to collect these Hypholoma capnoides, and I'm going to use scissors. You could use a knife, or you could just pluck them if you want, but I want to keep the dirt out of the bag, preserve the mycelium a little bit, so I just snip them off at the base. And there's your beautiful Conifer Tuft. And I'm going to put these into my brown paper bag. Save them. You don't really want to use a plastic bag. They can't breathe, but it would work in a pinch. You know, you could use your baseball cap if you want. These are beautiful, really nice specimens. So I'm going to take some of these home. Well, here's a good example. If you look on the cap here, it's got this like stain on it, and that's actually spores that came off of the other mushroom that was leaning against it, and so it's got that dark purple brown look. Those are all spores right there. So, but a pretty mushroom. So come on, let's get out of here and check it out. Somebody commented a few times on a couple of the videos about Bigfoot, you know, that they're worried that I'm going to just get snatched up by Bigfoot out here. You know, in all the years I've spent walking around the woods of the PNW, I've never ran into Bigfoot. I haven't even got a glimpse or anything like that, you know. I don't know, it's kind of a bummer. I wish I would. Coming down this trail, it's mostly wood chips, and then I look down here on the side of it, and we've got this really bright kind of yellow color. This one, another Hypholoma. Look how little these ones are, though. Wow, I want to say a Hypholoma fasciculare, but This could be another species of Hypholoma. Really small ones, but cool. Cool little mushrooms. But you can tell by that kind of neon yellow color and just by the gills. And once you get a sense for how these mushrooms look, you know, it's a little easier to place them. But it's just got the look of a Hypholoma. It's just a little one, but I'd probably count on Hypholoma fasciculare. The Sulfur Tuft, so this one's the relative of the Conifer Tuft, which I have and I'm planning on eating, but these ones right here get you really sick. So I'm just walking along the trail. I look down, see some litter catches my eye, and it's like an old marker stake. And it's got this ribbon on it. And then look what's growing like right on the ribbon. How about that? Nidulariaceae, the bird nest fungi. So this is a family of mushrooms that are very interesting and minute. You might have seen these. They often grow on little sticks and twigs in your lawn. There's several different species of them, and I'm not sure exactly what those species are, but if you look inside, it's got these little tiny eggs, if you will. Having a hard time recalling the scientific name of those things, but they're like little eggs, and then they actually depend on the rain. So the rain comes and it washes these out, and these actually you can see my finger in comparison. I mean, they're just tiny. They're just tiny little things, but those are the spore dispersal units for the Nidularians, or the Nidulariaceae, or the bird's nest fungi. So this is growing on a little chunk of moss, that's growing on a chunk of litter, that's growing on a stick out on this open road. So pretty resilient mushrooms. They're pretty tough, but very cool to look at. Very cool for macroscopic photos, you know. If I get really nice close-up, they sure are neat looking, right? And you can see why they're called bird's nests. They look like little nests with little eggs inside. I could just stare at those for days and just like imagine all of the mysteries of the world. I don't know. But yeah, once in a while you come across a bunch of those bird nest fungi, like even just growing on a stick in your yard or on the walkway or wherever. They just pop up. They don't really care much about habitat. They're just like, just want to grow, man. Just trying to grow on some wood, you know. This is another cool mushroom that you can find right here in the dead of winter in western Washington. So I'm going to flip my camera so we can look at these. But these are known as hygroscoby, so waxy cap. So you see these really kind of orange things. They look like orange bell peppers or something growing here. And they're like growing all around the stump here. So as we look, oh, there's a nice cluster of them right up here. Another big one down here. So these ones, the fact that they're not very umbonate, which means they're not super pointy, and they're not red. They're really kind of a flat cap when they mature, and they are very greasy feeling, even when they're dry. But look at that, really widely spaced gills, and then look at how cool the gill patterns get when they get really mature like that. Really kind of wavy. How cool is that? Really kind of greasy feeling stem, and then the cap is really greasy feeling. So you can see why they call this, whoops, you can see why they would call this a wax cap. I mean, it looks like it's just made out of wax. And this is in the genus hygroscoby, so most of these hygroscoby mushrooms are going to be yellow and red and orange colored. On a recent video I did, we found some of the hygroscoby miniata. These ones would probably be called hygroscoby flavescens, although that species was described in Michigan, and these ones growing here on the West Coast are probably genetically different from the flavescens of Europe or of Michigan. So these haven't had a lot of work done on them as far as sequencing and stuff goes here on the West Coast. So they probably don't even really have a name right now. People call them hygroscoby flavescens though. or if you see the term Hygroscibie CF flavescens, that means confer with flavescens. So you would look up the Hygroscibie flavescens, and it would say here on the west coast, west of the Rockies. It's probably something else, but you can compare it against that. These are not toxic. You could eat these if you wanted to, even though they're just not a distinct flavor or smell or anything like that, and just the greasy texture is a little bit weird if you ask me. Okay, so I'm back home with my cool finds for the day, and one of them is definitely got to be this stick. Look at this crazy coloration on it. So I'm going to dry this out, and we'll see about some kind of whittling or making a trinket or something out of it, or just keep a chunk of it because it's cool. But too bad I didn't see any fruiting bodies growing on this particular stick. That's an interesting find. And then also I have my bag of Hypholoma capnoides. So these are supposedly a good edible mushroom, and I think I'm going to saute some up, and we'll have a taste. They just smell kind of mushroomy to me. There's no distinct smell going on, but interesting little mushrooms, and an interesting genus of mushrooms. So let's see what we can do with these once we get all these pine needles wiped off of their somewhat slimy feeling caps. They're a little bit greasy feeling on top of the cap, but I wouldn't call them viscid. I don't know, let's cook these up and see what they taste like. So come on. Alright, we got our butter and oil mixture nice and hot. We're gonna grab our mushrooms, go right in the pan with them. I don't like to rinse off my mushrooms with water. I like to get them all, pretty much just brush them clean and pick all the pine needles and dirt off of them, but we're going to turn down the heat just a skosh, just a little under medium, so that these can kind of simmer and not burn. And basically we're just going to let these cook for about 10 minutes. It's about how long you want to cook most wild mushrooms, just to make sure that you've broken down all of those compounds that are hard for humans to digest, so you don't get the indigestion. A lot of liquid being released from these mushrooms right now, so we're going to let that moisture kind of evaporate off of there. You can see that spore color. It's really kind of this purplish color coming out now that it's cooking. I'm going to add in just a little bit of salt. Not a lot there. They cook down to not very much, but enough to get a taste. Ooh. Very rich and savory, and pretty nutty, you know. I think everybody describes every mushroom as nutty, but very rich. Wow. You want to try a little bit out first, but these are really good. They would go really good on a steak or a hamburger or something like that, if you could find enough of them. I only just found this, I don't know, maybe 10 of them, and they cook down quite a bit. Chewy. Kind of chewy and a little crunchy. I dig them. I think they're really good. The Hypholoma, sort of not so much of a beginner's mushroom ID, but if you can compare all the different characteristics of the fasciculare versus the capnoides, and you can find some of these here in the middle of winter, really good eating. Hey, so I'm checking back in. It's been a couple hours since I ate those mushrooms, and feel better than I've ever felt. In fact, I think I feel better than I did before I ate them. So the Hypholoma capnoides, delicious wild edible mushroom. Don't get it confused with the Hypholoma fasciculare. And I'm just thankful that you guys are all checking out Mushroom Wonderland. Please hit subscribe. Please hit that like button. Thanks for watching Mushroom Wonderland. We'll catch you next time. Later.